Lies have been part of human history since the dawn of civilization. Some lies are harmless, but others have changed the course of history, fooled entire nations, and even started wars. Today we're uncovering the biggest lies that shook the world, from ancient schemes to modern deceptions. These are the lies that not only fooled the world, but left a lasting impact. Stay with us because you won't believe what lies at the top of our list. Number 1. The Trojan Horse. Our story begins in ancient Greece around 1200 BCE during the legendary Trojan War. The Greeks, desperate to conquer the city of Troy after a 10-year siege, came up with a brilliant deception: the Trojan Horse. They pretended to retreat, leaving behind a massive wooden horse as a peace offering. But hidden inside the horse were elite Greek soldiers. The Trojans, believing the war was over, brought the horse into their city as a trophy of victory. As they celebrated, the Greek soldiers emerged at night, opened the gates, and allowed the Greek army to invade and destroy Troy. This cunning plan shows how a simple lie can turn the tide of a war. But what's even more fascinating is how this story has endured for millennia, becoming a symbol of trickery and betrayal in cultures around the world. The phrase, "Beware of Greeks bearing gifts," comes from this story, and is still used today to warn against trusting enemies who bring offerings. The tale of the Trojan Horse also marks one of the earliest recorded instances of psychological warfare. Number 2. The donation of Constantine. Jumping forward to the Middle Ages, we encounter one of the most influential forgeries in history: the donation of Constantine. This document, supposedly written by the Roman Emperor Constantine the Great, claimed to transfer authority over Rome and the western part of the Roman Empire to the Pope. For centuries, this document was used by the Catholic Church to justify its political power over European kings and emperors. It wasn't until the 15th century that scholars like Lorenzo Valla exposed it as a fake. The donation of Constantine wasn't just a lie, it was a tool that shaped the political and religious landscape of medieval Europe, giving the Church immense power. The donation of Constantine was cited in church law for over 1,000 years. Even after it was proven to be a forgery, its influence remained. It serves as an example of how a well-crafted lie can alter the course of history and manipulate the balance of power. Number 3. The war to end all wars. World War I, fought between 1914 and 1918, was one of the deadliest conflicts in history. With over 16 million deaths, it left the world scarred. To justify the immense sacrifice, leaders and propagandists called it the war to end all wars. This phrase was meant to instill hope that such devastation would never happen again. However, the Treaty of Versailles, which ended the war, imposed harsh penalties on Germany, sowing the seeds for World War II. Far from ending all wars, World War I led to an even greater conflict. The lie that it was the war to end all wars was a tragic irony, highlighting how easily people can be manipulated by hopeful but unrealistic promises. One of the most famous propagandists of the era was Lord Bryce, whose reports on German atrocities were later found to be exaggerated or fabricated. This propaganda fueled anti-German sentiment and justified the war effort. It shows how lies and half-truths can shape public opinion and policy. Number 4. The flat Earth belief. For much of human history, people believed the Earth was flat. This belief wasn't just a matter of ignorance. It was actively promoted by religious and political authorities who feared that questioning it would undermine their power. Ancient Greeks like Pythagoras and later Aristotle provided evidence of a spherical Earth, but these ideas were suppressed during the Middle Ages. The flat Earth belief persisted for centuries until the age of exploration, and the scientific revolution provided irrefutable evidence of a round Earth. The persistence of this lie shows how powerful authorities can control knowledge and suppress truth to maintain their influence. Contrary to popular belief, most educated people in the Middle Ages did not believe in a flat Earth. The myth that everyone thought the Earth was flat until Columbus is actually a lie itself, popularized in the 19th century to portray earlier societies as primitive. It's a lie within a lie. Number 5, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. One of the most damaging lies in history is the anti-Semitic forgery known as the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. This document, first published in Russia in the early 20th century, claimed to reveal a secret Jewish conspiracy to dominate the world. Despite being exposed as a fabrication, it was widely circulated and used to justify anti-Semitic policies, including in Nazi Germany. The protocols fueled hatred, discrimination, and violence against Jewish communities worldwide. This lie shows how dangerous misinformation can be, inciting hatred and violence based on falsehoods. The protocols were so influential that Henry Ford, the American industrialist, printed and distributed 500,000 copies in the United States. The impact of this lie is still felt today, as it continues to be cited by anti-Semitic groups and conspiracy theorists around the world. Number 6. Weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. In the early 2000s, the world was led to believe that Iraq possessed weapons of mass destruction, WMDs. This claim was the primary justification for the 2003 invasion of Iraq by the United States and its allies. Despite extensive searches, no such weapons were ever found. The lie about WMDs not only led to a long and costly war, but also destabilized the Middle East, leading to years of conflict and suffering. This lie demonstrates how misinformation at the highest levels of government can lead to devastating consequences affecting millions of lives. One of the most cited pieces of evidence for WMDs in Iraq was a dossier known as the Dodgy dossier, which was later found to be based on outdated and plagiarized information. The scandal over the dossier's credibility led to widespread criticism of intelligence agencies and political leaders. Number 7. The Great Moon Hoax. In 1835, the New York Sun published a series of sensational articles claiming that life had been discovered on the moon. The articles described strange animals, lush vegetation, and even bat-like humanoids. The so-called Great Moon Hoax was a complete fabrication, created to boost the newspaper's sales. And it worked. People were fascinated by the idea of life on the moon, and the newspaper's circulation skyrocketed. The hoax was eventually exposed, but it remained a fascinating example of how easily the public can be deceived by sensational stories. The Great Moon Hoax inspired Edgar Allan Poe to write his own hoax story, The Balloon Hoax, which was published in the New York Sun in 1844. Poe's story claimed that a manned balloon had crossed the Atlantic Ocean in 3 days, and many readers believed it. Number 8. Smoking is good for you. In the mid-20th century, tobacco companies went to great lengths to convince the public that smoking was not only safe, but actually good for you. They used images of doctors in their advertisements, claiming that certain cigarette brands were recommended by physicians. The reality was far different. Smoking causes lung cancer, heart disease, and a host of other health problems. It took decades of research and advocacy to reveal the truth and change public perception. This lie shows the power of corporate interests and the lengths they will go to protect profits, even at the expense of public health. In 1964, the Surgeon General of the United States released a report definitively linking smoking to cancer and other diseases. This report marked the beginning of the decline in smoking rates and the rise of anti-smoking campaigns. But the damage had already been done, with millions suffering from smoking-related illnesses. Number 9. The Piltdown Man Hoax. In 1912, amateur archaeologist Charles Dawson claimed to have discovered the missing link between apes and humans in Piltdown, England. The so-called Piltdown Man consisted of a human-like skull and an ape-like jaw, suggesting a direct evolutionary connection. For over 40 years, this discovery was accepted by the scientific community, reinforcing the theory of human evolution. However, in 1953, it was exposed as a hoax. The skull belonged to a medieval human and the jawbone was from an orangutan, both artificially aged to look ancient. This lie misled scientists and delayed genuine discoveries in the field of human evolution. The Piltdown Man Hoax is considered one of the most infamous scientific frauds in history. It highlighted the need for rigorous verification in scientific research and has since become a cautionary tale about the dangers of confirmation bias. Number 10. The Dreyfus Affair. In 1894, French army officer Alfred Dreyfus, a Jewish man, was falsely accused of treason and sentenced to life imprisonment on Devil's Island. The evidence against him was fabricated, and the real traitor, Ferdinand Walsin Esterhazy, was protected by high-ranking officials. The Dreyfus Affair divided French society, with anti-Semitic factions exploiting the lie to fuel hatred against Jews. It wasn't until 1906 that Dreyfus was exonerated and reinstated. This case became a symbol of the dangers of scapegoating and the power of lies in manipulating justice and public opinion. The Dreyfus Affair inspired the famous open letter J'accuse by writer Émile Zola, which exposed the injustice and led to widespread public outcry. The affair played a crucial role in the formation of the modern human rights movement and highlighted the importance of a free press in holding power to account. Number 11, the myth of Paul Revere's ride. Most Americans know the story of Paul Revere's midnight ride in 1775, warning the colonies that the British are coming. However, this story, popularized by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's poem, is largely a myth. In reality, Revere was just one of many riders, and he didn't complete the famous ride alone. Revere was captured by the British, and it was other riders, including Samuel Prescott and William Dawes, who carried the message to Lexington and Concord. The embellished tale served as powerful patriotic propaganda, turning Revere into a national hero. Longfellow wrote his poem nearly a century after the events took place, aiming to inspire American unity during the Civil War. The poem's inaccuracies were intentional, as Longfellow prioritized a compelling narrative over historical accuracy. This shows how myths can shape national identity and historical memory. Number 12, the Reichstag Fire. In 1933, the German Reichstag Parliament building was set on fire. The Nazi Party, led by Adolf Hitler, blamed the fire on communists, using it as a pretext to pass the Reichstag Fire Decree. This decree suspended civil liberties, allowing the Nazis to arrest political opponents and consolidate power. Many historians believe the Nazis themselves orchestrated the fire to create fear and justify their authoritarian measures. The Reichstag fire lie marks a pivotal moment in the rise of the Nazi regime, showing how fear and manipulation can dismantle democracy. The lone arsonist, a Dutch communist named Marinus van der Lubbe, was quickly arrested, tried and executed. However, evidence of his involvement remains controversial, and many believe he was a scapegoat used by the Nazis to legitimize their crackdown on dissent. The incident exemplifies how lies and staged events can be exploited to achieve political ends. Number 13, the Loch Ness Monster. The legend of the Loch Ness Monster, often affectionately called Nessie, dates back to ancient times. However, it wasn't until 1933 that the myth really took off, when a photograph emerged showing a long-necked creature swimming in the Scottish lake. The surgeon's photograph became iconic, convincing many that a prehistoric monster lurked in Loch Ness. Decades later, the photo was revealed to be a hoax, an elaborate model created to fool the public. Despite this, the myth persists, drawing tourists and fueling the imaginations of believers around the world. Even after the hoax was exposed, Nessie remained a popular figure in pop culture and cryptozoology. The Loch Ness Monster generates millions of dollars annually in tourism revenue for Scotland, showing how a well-crafted lie can become a lucrative legend. Number 14, the myth of the clean war. The term clean war refers to the idea that certain conflicts are fought without civilian casualties or atrocities, focusing purely on military targets. This concept was heavily promoted during World War II by both the Allies and Axis powers, portraying their own forces as honorable and humane. In reality, no war is clean. Civilian casualties, war crimes, and atrocities occurred on all sides. The idea of a clean war is a comforting lie that allows societies to justify the horrors of conflict and avoid facing the full moral implications of war. One of the most famous examples of this myth was the portrayal of the strategic bombing campaigns over Germany and Japan, including the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, as necessary and humane. These actions, which caused massive civilian casualties, were justified under the guise of ending the war quickly and saving more lives in the long run, a narrative still debated by historians today. Number 15, the 2008 financial crisis and too big to fail. The 2008 financial crisis exposed a lie that had been perpetuated by banks, financial institutions, and government regulators, that some companies were too big to fail. The idea was that these institutions were so large and interconnected that their failure would bring down the entire economy. When the housing market collapsed, leading to a global financial meltdown, governments worldwide bailed out these giant banks, costing taxpayers billions. The lie of too big to fail allowed reckless behavior in the financial industry, leading to one of the worst economic crises in modern history. The aftermath of the 2008 crisis led to the Occupy Wall Street movement, which popularized the term the 1% to criticize income inequality and the influence of corporate money in politics. The crisis and the response to it have had lasting impacts on global economies, financial regulations, and public trust in financial institutions. Conclusion. From ancient myths to modern-day scandals, these lies have shaped our world in profound ways. They remind us to question what we hear, seek the truth, and remember that sometimes the most widely accepted stories are built on lies. History is full of lessons, and perhaps the most important one is this. Always be skeptical and never stop asking questions. Sometimes the biggest lie is the one that everyone believes. Thanks for watching. If you found these stories as fascinating as we did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments which lie you found the most unbelievable. And hit the bell so you won't miss any of our future explorations into the world's most intriguing facts.